Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this month European Teams user group. Vesa is here, me is here, and Chris will be here in about 20 minutes actually, and he was the one with the slides, so I had to temporarily just hook up some slides here, but that will work anyway. We have two speakers today, Ville and Michael Plettner, and I think Ville, you will start off today, actually, and you can tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just hijack the presentation and we'll do it like this so that I can use my presentation screen as well. So we're going to talk about some Teams adoption with the focus on adoption. Put that one away. And if you have any questions to me, you can just reach out on my Twitter username right there, or my Teams address. You see, my Teams address is fully backwards compatible, so it even works with legacy systems such as emails. But we're mainly going to talk about adoption and really how to drive a successful Teams adoption project, some cornerstones that you need to have in mind. And I think it's fairly impossible to talk about the Microsoft Cloud Services without first talking about one thing, and that is light bulbs, of course. And this is my favorite slide to begin pretty much any presentations, because it describes how I see the Microsoft Cloud Services. The electric light didn't come from the continuous improvement of candles, right? And this is the way I see Microsoft Teams as well, any Microsoft Cloud Services. It's in many ways the same way as that Henry Ford didn't improve upon the horse. Instead, he improved by making a car, because the problem wasn't the horse. The problem was essentially you needed to go faster. You needed speed. The same way here, the issue isn't really about the candles. The issue about being able to see. And I think for some people I meet at work, they tend to think of cloud services like they're filling new gaps. And that is, of course, not the case. In any adoption project, we want to work with the exact same issues that you already have in your organization. We just want to have a different path in, solving them, doing it a little bit differently. So key takeaway number one, have an open mind and try to think outside the box. Remember this one, the electric light didn't come from the continuous improvement of candles. So let's say you have come to your senses and you want to drive adoption, but what about your organization? Are they really on board? See, I usually sit down with customers and I'm laying it out for them. I'm saying, yeah, sure. This is the problem. It's going to be a bumpy road. And this is pretty much what I show them. And they be like, no, that's not the bumpy road. This is the bumpy road. And in terms of how much time we actually have on driving adoption, the road is on fire. And by the way, this is our user base. They are literally monkeys and Amish people. So this is what I want to break apart when we want to drive a successful Teams adoption project, or any kind of adoption project, really. So first things first, yes, the road is on fire. You don't have any time to work with adoption. But the thing is, every person on the entire planet has exactly the same amount of hours in one day. The problem isn't that you lack any time. The problem is that you don't prioritize it on adoption. So this is basically your choice. This is something that you can do something about. You can reprioritize. However, you can control others, and you will find that the fire, it's going to spread if you just roll up your sleeves and you just get down to it. So this is why, well, you should roll up your sleeves and just get to it, but you should also get yourself an executive sponsor, because executive sponsorships will help you to make adoption a priority, not just for you, but for the entire organization. That will help you to free up some time in your calendar as well as for others, so that you will be able to make an impact. And in terms of your users being monkeys or Amish, well, this is really a mindset we cannot accept on our adoption journey, really. So not by us, not by anyone on our team, not by pretty much, well, anyone. Because, yeah, sure, people might sound ignorant, but you know what? People aren't against you. They are for themselves. And I realize we will not be able to sit down with everyone and, listen to them to sort of prove their competency. So we just have to accept that it is what it is. People are competent. We have to accept that they are able to understand what we're saying and drive their own adoption. We have to believe in them and we have to trust them. So you see, I also have a slide for this, or a picture for this, which is in a classroom. Before, how should I say this? Before these kind of experiments were illegal, you know, and experimenting on children like this, there was actually a test back in the days. And what they did was they sent out a study or a test to some students, and they were, you know, doing the tests and then gathered all the tests, but the teachers just sent them into a central proofing. So they didn't proof the test themselves. It was done centrally, and no one got to know the results of this. No one had any idea who had scored anything on these tests. However, the teachers got a small list back, and the list was of all the genius children, you know, the next Einsteins, if you will. And it was like, yeah, so you should keep an eye out on these people, because these children, well, they are possibly our next Einstein. So treat them that way. And after a year, they followed up, and lo and behold, the children that were, you know, targeted by the test, well, they had actually turned out to outdo most of their peers in most of the different subjects. Now, the thing with this is it was all fake. The test was fake. The list of children was just a random selection out of all the children. But the teachers believed in those children, and now they exceeded because they had trust, they had belief from their teachers, and that's the sort of thing that you need to have towards your users as well. So if we remove this picture and we go back here, we have no more fire on the road. It's still bumpy, but it's not on fire because we have executive sponsorship and we have rolled up our sleeves. Now the users, they look exactly the same, but we have to believe in them and we have to trust them. That's a very key point for driving a successful adoption journey. And when it comes to the road actually being this bumpy, well, people have climbed on Mount Everest, and not everything in life is easy. So yeah, we have to just get to it, really. Next one up is perhaps the most important key takeaway when it comes to driving adoption. So this is what we want to do, or mainly what we usually want to do. This is from a cartoon when I was a kid. So we want to just take all the knowledge that we have, everything on how you do things, and just push it right down into the brain of our users, right? This would be the perfect scenario. We all know that this would be valuable to you, and we just want you to know and understand all of this. However, this is obviously not how it works. So the secret recipe for any adoption project, it consists of 2 ingredients, but they have to be applied in the correct order. The first one is not knowledge, not instruction, but inspiration. So whenever I'm holding a workshop or I'm doing a seminar, this is what I'm looking for. When your users is looking at you like this, then you have succeeded. That's your goal, because these people are inspired. They understand why this is important for them. So that's what you should focus on. We are very, very good, usually within IT, to focus on instructions. So we create guides, we create FAQs, we do all of these knowledge things, and we create all these, you know, instructions to try to explain to people how they should do things. But they have to understand why they should do them first. And the thing is, when they understand why they should do something, they tend to learn by themselves. So inspiration must always come before instruction. That's quite possibly the most important thing that I have to say to you today. So always begin with inspiration, then move on to instruction. And people will find the way to teach themselves and find time and motivate themselves to do all these things that you then teach them. Now, in the case of, you know, defining success for your adoption project, let's say we hit the bullseye. We have done everything by the book and we have a completely perfect technical platform. We can still be seen as a failure. And this is bad, people, because the thing is, regardless if we've done this exactly like you should be doing it, we have had all the workshops, we've had you know, the environment is just up and running, everyone has the program on their computer, still people aren't happy. You know why? Because happiness is a choice. people. It is something that we can decide upon. So yeah, technically we can be on the number one place, but we could still be seen as a failure because, well, we're not happy with what we got. Thing is, and this is a good thing, it works the other way around as well. So set up realistic goals for yourself and focus a lot on inspiring the people around you, motivate them and teach them. So that, you know, it's not all about technology and it's not all about doing things perfectly or doing it the best way we can. Sometimes it's just about doing something better than we did before. Right. So remember that technology is basically only important when it doesn't work. So make sure it works, and that's it. Then you switch focus to adoption and to actually teaching people to drive value from these services and from Teams services. Let's see if I'm missing something that I had in mind here. Yeah, exactly. So less time should be spent on figuring out the perfect detail behind closed doors. Instead, just go out there and be great, really. In terms of consultants, you should never be driven when it comes to an adoption project. This works fairly well with technical projects, but in terms of consultants, please do bring them on. Use them, but don't use them to drive you from point A to point B, or don't even think about using consultants in that term, because driving adoption and driving Teams adoption is not about taking you from point A to point B. So it's rather, you know, the journey in itself that is the adoption project. So that's a key difference when we are trying to improve the way we do business, the way we work, instead of just a technical project. So don't take the back seat on this one. You have to be in the driver's seat when you are driving adoption. So if we look at, for example, a technical project, it's usually like this, right? You have no value at all, and then you have a go live date. And on the go live date, that's when you bring value in. So this is pretty much just a transportation from point A to point B. Point B being when we go live. That's when we are providing value. So in most cases, we would like to move point B as close to us as possible. We want to take some shortcuts. We want to just get there so that we can get the value. However, driving an adoption project is more like this. So you get some value as you go, right? So as the time goes on, people will learn a little bit more, and a little bit more, and eventually you will crawl up there. So it's really more like a racetrack than a transportation from point A to point B. You know, a racetrack where you are the driver and you want to drive a lap faster and faster, or you want to improve your overall driving. And this could even be one of those races where you have to hand over your car and the car is still going. You just change the driver to one in your Teams, which means that it doesn't matter if you are an expert on Teams. We all have to be. So a very simple example from this: if you have a Teams meeting, let's take turns in sharing our screen and actually, you know, using the tools. Even if you are better at it, even if you know where all the buttons are and you can find them so much faster, so the meeting would be a bit better if you did it every time. Let's just take turns and have everyone try it out and feel it and learn from it. Because even if we are in the short term going to, well, lose some speed at this, we are going to win in the long term instead. So please do bring on consultants, just not for driving you, rather to teach you and to let you, miss out on some of the gaps that are out there. This is the kind of consultants that you should go forward with. And you should always be the one driving this. You have to be the face out. In case of communication, you got to hype a lot. Hype is basically not telling people what to do or how to do it. It's just saying things are going to be better. Teams is going to solve a lot of problems. Teams is going to make our cooperation so much better. That's kind of hype we want, because we want to make sure that Teams, when it comes, it's going to be accepted as something of a solver, right? A problem solver. And If the service is not available, let's say we haven't activated Teams yet, or we're migrating already, then instruct only on the most important things, only on those things that will actually change for me, right? This is how I log on to the system. This icon will show up. This login window will appear. This is the most essential and basic things that I need to know in order to start to use the service, because I don't have it already. I have no interest in knowing how I can do things that I can't do right now. Because if you tell me something that I can do in some time, something else is going to be much more important right now than whatever you just told me. However, when the service is available, do inspire and instruct on possibilities. Show me all these things. Show me that I can share my screen from my mobile phone, regardless if I have an Android or iPhone, and show me that I can use moderation on a channel and all these things that brings me value in my Teams usage, but only now that I can actually do these things and not before. Set up a communications plan, because usually people, especially people who has worked a lot of in IT and with technical projects, well, there are a lot of differences between your technical plan and your communication plan. If you haven't set up a communication plan before, reach out to some consultant who's working with this, or your communication department, because there is a lot of things that most people do not think about when it comes to communication plans. And setting one up is really a key factor in succeeding or failing in your project. Finally, be very clear, because things, well, you may think that you are clear. You may think that you told them exactly what you wanted, but they can hear something completely different, like these three gentlemen, where one is basically saying it's windy today, and the other one saying, yeah, no, it's Thursday today. Oh, so am I. Let's have a beer. So basically, communication is hard, people, and even though it may feel like this should be a simple thing, make sure just don't think that it is. Be over clear, and on terms of communications, I have never to this day been in any project where we, during the lessons learned, said that, yeah, we did a bit too much communication. Maybe we focused a bit much on communicating. That has never happened. So really, if whatever you're thinking in terms of how much you want to communicate, do more, and you're gonna be fine. So to wrap things up, key takeaways: inspiration before instruction, always. If there's one thing that you want to remember after today, it's inspiration comes before instruction, always. Open your mind. Maybe things isn't, inside the box. Maybe the solution lies somewhere outside of it, especially when it comes to Microsoft Teams and how you can do things. The possibilities are truly endless. Believe in people and trust them. That is also one of the key things if you want to succeed on any adoption project. Get executive sponsorship. You won't succeed without them. Technology is only important when it doesn't work. Make sure it works, and then focus on adoption. Don't strive for perfection, just do it better. Consult with experts, but be the driver. Set up a communications plan, and finally, inspiration before instruction. That is my key takeaway for this entire presentation. Thanks. Do you have any kind of questions right now? Feel free to ask. Nobody? And I was like super fast, I see now. I was gonna go on for like another 25 minutes, but this just went really fast.
I think that was awesome. Thank you.
Do we have Michael with us now?
Yes, we have.
Perfect.
Yes, you do. And I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Awesome.
I really like that session, Ville. Above all, I love those all those funny pictures.
That's usually my response for all these presentations. And I learned actually for this presentation that you can have GIF pictures within a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
I didn't know that before.
But I'm very keen to add that to my repertoire as well, like more funny stuff. All right, Michael, you ready, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
So,
you may hijack.
Unfortunately, yes, I will do. But unfortunately, it's not as funny as your presentation. So I'm a German. I'm more serious. So you know how it is. So before during the announcements for this session, we had some different understandings between the topic of today. And so one said, hey, I will do something, or I said, I will do something about security. And it was announced as a user adoption session. So instead of doing one or the other, I do both together. And I thought about the situation as a very common situation for a consultant come into a company and talk to the IT department and talk about security and data protection. And so let me introduce myself just short. I'm doing Skype for Business Teams, multiple years, TeamsUG Group, Germany. That's you can see the small icon on the right upper side multiple times. And I'm working in transition from an old system like Skype for Business to Teams, change management, digital transformation, workplace. And with all those topics, security is a main point in that. So what can you expect? You can hear something about typical customer projects, mainly concerns, some experiences when you talk to some admins, security officers, and also see some security perspective instances, last but not least, with security recommendations. So the main question for me, and this is something you have or you maybe can answer, is shall we treat the IT users completely different as regular users? What do you think? Can I see actually some feedback here? Hear something?
I think we should treat them a little bit differently, but essentially they're humans, bottom line. So
yes, no, that's absolutely the right answer. I hope to jump in this question actually, because that's absolutely the right answer. Basically, they are regular users, but they do have a better technical understanding. So they are maybe have a different look into new topics and maybe the backgrounds, but basically they are users. They have to be trained, and they are running through all the typical change waves. And this is a general diagram. Just take a look into the gray part of the slide, which is you announce them, take you something, and they are shocked. They are mad, and then they try to experiment with that, get the experience. Then they decide success and happiness is a decision to use the tool, engage, and they start to use it way better as before. So that's a very typical phase, and that's very typical for all IT projects. And of course, Skype for Business to Teams is not a different story. We move it from an on-premises environment to the cloud. And that's a really, really common issue for the users, even in IT or in technical background, because the data is in the internet. Everyone can access the data. Microsoft, or actually Cisco or other companies are the trusted vendors, but Microsoft is a bad company. And just our CEO or CIO made the decision. So that's horrible. It was not me that made the decision. That's not good. And I took a look into the environment from Office 365, and it's very, very complex. So that's a general concern. If you talk to someone to bring something new in from Office 365, then that's really pretty common for the whole IT department. But we do have some security and data protection people who are doing some, take a deeper look and just think we have to protect our data. We need a higher security standard for all Office 365 services. Internal data needs additional protection, and we need protection for the by the system, not the user, because the user is not trustworthy. And the good story behind that is there is a framework outside for this concerns to actually work against those concerns, and which is a general idea behind identifying what is the current situation, what do we have, or what needs protection, what's necessary to engage, decide what product or solution we will use to protect our data, implement that, start with a POC, and detect any issues. Like it's not working as expected, it's maybe not secure as you expected it. Get some responses with analysis, with diagrams, with usage reports, start with improvements, communication. But I said it before, that's very important to reflect. It's not a single jump, it's an improvement over time. So that's important also for the security stuff. So what kind of solution is available when you talk about Office 365? And it's pretty straightforward when you start to dig a bit deeper into the topic. First of all is, of course, Azure AD. But Azure AD is, for the most unexperienced IT people, just an identity system. So what is there about security? Well, basically, you can specify how to handle external contacts, federated contacts. Is it allowed to enable external contacts being involved in your infrastructure? Can they be invited? What about groups? Is there any group self-service? Is every user able to create groups and maybe create groups, invite externals? It's something you can specify in the Azure AD. And last but not least, or especially the security perspective, is something with a blocking words list. And that sounds pretty basic. But I heard an explanation, a situation where this really makes sense. For example, if it's allowed to create groups with the name of your CEO, then you get a valid email address with the full name at your domain from your CEO. There's maybe a missing dot in the middle or a missing minus or something like that. But for unknown users, it looks like this is a valid email address from the CIO, and you can grab some information because this email address is available just because the address or the group name is like your CEO. The second one is multi-factor authentication. And multi-factor authentication is not just for authentication, it's also for authorization. So authentication is one step to make sure you are the one who is able or has permissions to get access to the system. But you can use MFA to combine it with conditional access. And conditional access allows you to check and enforce the usage from multi-factor authentication. So you are able to check, is the current user who signed in via MFA, then he gets access to the system. Does he have the right IP addresses, IP address range? Is he using a company device? Do we may have some exclusions about that? Are there any specific apps you can configure, like the Outlook in web, on the web app? Is this something you want to allow also from external devices, like a private PC? But maybe you want to avoid some downloading. It's something you can create with conditional access and MFA in combination. Some of the advanced techniques are Azure Information Protection, which is kind of old name. It will be renamed to Unified Labeling, or it's currently rolling out. Sorry. And with Azure Information Protection, you create another security level, which is checking the permissions, not only on do you have access to the file, but also do you just have a subset of permissions for interacting with the file. For example, you have access to all the personal documents like contracts of your employees, but you're not able to change it. You're not able to print it. You're not even able to use it outside of your company account. When you leave the company, all your permissions are gone, and you are not able to open it even if you have copied it to your local file system or your local private PC. That's something which is together with data loss prevention, DLP, something you can implement. Use some labels which are looking for specific conditions, auto-assign labeling for SharePoint documents, and for that also for Teams documents. And then you can use data loss prevention and Azure Information Protection to protect your data. Data loss prevention is something you are looking at. If someone is sharing your information, for example, you have a specific type of number like internal ID, like your account number, or a specific format as UPM. You can look into all the files in, or at least the Microsoft supported files, which is a lot, for how often this ID is coming, has been found in documents. And then you have some actions behind that. You can look for some additional words, and if you have a subset of those 3 or 4 conditions, all are successful or are true, then you can block the sharing, sending out via email, sharing via Teams, using it in Teams with external guest users, something like that. There's a huge and wide range for protect your data, even if there's something which you're currently allowed to use. You also have the permissions via Azure Information Protection. You can avoid some intentional or accidental sharing of data. So what is the recommendation about all the security stuff? It's enable MFA. It's the easiest way to secure your system on a completely different level. So if you're using Office 365, Microsoft 365, enable MFA, multi-factor authentication is crucial for your security. Kind of user adoption, identify the system, the use cases, sorry, identify the use cases. Think with the IT, think with the local guys who know the business, also the apes and the other users, how they work, and identify use cases, not only for the business, but also for IT. Because IT is maybe working with some more external parties, they maybe need other or have other use cases. Create conditional access policies to secure your environment. As I mentioned before, maybe an address range, IP address range, maybe some device states like compliant, not compliant. You can specify compliance rules, which OS level should be implemented, which setting has to be applied before you get the device as confidential. Not confidential, as compliant, sorry. And then you can create conditional access policies. Specify governance rules. As I mentioned before, groups, naming policies. That's something you can set up as governance. You are able to provide some restrictions, but also chances and possibilities for the users. So when you want to avoid the creation of a team, it's able for every user in your company, which is pretty common in at least Germany. Then you restrict the users to create any team, any group, anything like that. But you also have to provide something like a flow, something like a workflow, however, to enable the users to create something instead of just have no chance to use the new system. So you're able to provide a flow, create the group, create all the stuff, and during the flow or during the form to create the flow or to start the flow, you are able to ask for specific parameters. For example, specific names, something like a second owner of the team. If this is something you want to have, that's the best point for you to ask. And it's even better to ask before you create something like a new team, instead of, what happened here. You have 4,000 teams and nothing is as you would need it. A single user or something like that, single owner, and he left the company 2 days ago. The next is definitely create unified labeling and DLP rules. That's the most complex part of all the security mechanisms here, because you have to identify or you have to specify unique identifiers, create dependencies and all the stuff. That's very complex. And it's something I can talk about 30, 60 minutes just before we have one single rule enabled, because there are so many dependencies you can change. But if you have done some of them, 3, 4, 5, 6, then you have the experience, and that go even faster. As you as an admin, it's just a kind of training for that. Just tips about the governance rules, who can create a team, naming convention, guest access, which app can be used. So especially with Teams, you have so many third-party apps. You want maybe to restrict some of those apps, or you want to allow hundreds of apps to use your data, and then it's fine, but you have to make this decision. So even every idea you're following, every project for Teams implementation or using Office 365 has to follow a purpose. In this case, you have to decide yes, I want to share all my data with third-party apps. That's fine for me, and then it's good. But you did the decision before. Which workload? It's very important especially when you're moving from Skype for Business to Teams with a full set of features like Skype for Business telephony and meetings, sharing with externals, all the stuff. Which workload is planned in which phase? What's the general idea behind that? What's the purpose for using Teams? And of course, data security governance. But hey, it's about adoption, right? So just don't forget the people behind that. All I said is more about the technical stuff. But admins are people like you and I is maybe not the best example, but admins are just regular people. They are users as well. In some cases, they are the best, for example, SAP admins or network administrators or even IT directors, but they are users as well. So they use common products like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams from the user perspective. So think about them as a user as well. Don't think they work in IT, so they are aware of any products related to IT. Involve them during decisions. So when you decide to restrict the access for guests and externals in general, then you may have to involve the IT department, or I highly recommend to involve the IT department, not just for doing the task, but also for making the decision, because they have other needs as a regular business, maybe. Empower IT, so give some trainings. As I said it before, make them eager to understand what happens to my IT when I move to Microsoft 365 to Office 365. What happens with my workloads? Enable the users to understand that's not taking something from them, but enable them to do more. And last but not least, take a look into tools like Security and Compliance Center, where you get a ton of information, how to protect your system, how to get your data compliant, and do it together with the IT. Because IT is also responsible for driving some rules, even if you as a consultant have left the company and they are doing it on their own. And they can monitor it with those tools, get some recommendation also for new changes and some policies outside of your company. So, as a general understanding, if you start with migration, you have to identify a scenario, user scenario. So, what's your idea? I'm a member of IT management, so I have the idea to provide a single document about infrastructure information and proposals to all my to my external parties. So I want to use something, in this case SharePoint, for example, as a central store and share a single version of this proposal and enable the team to create more solutions in the same time, just for avoiding any information lags. So that's a very common scenario when you start to think about user adoption. Create your scenarios, and with the scenarios you can identify your goals and also measure your goals. So I want to share this very, very well known, I hope at least, well-known idea behind user adoption driven from Microsoft perspective. The key factors are assemble your team, get the right people involved, define business strategies, readiness, identify what's necessary to be ready to start, get the users involved, plan for your environment, take your early adopters, champions, identify your champions who are driving all your information into the business and leading your colleagues into, whoa, that's an awesome feature. You have to try that. Create the hype. That's what I said before. Adjust the plan if something is wrong and your estimation was wrong. And of course, monitor, measure, and report also what was good and what went bad. Especially for IT, bring them to use the tools, train the champions, ask for feedback. That's something when you start a project, it's something you have to do, because someone is using the tool and maybe is happy with that, you never hear that. If someone's using the tool and he's mad about that, you maybe never hear it as well, because he is mad and he don't want to talk about that crappy software. And then if you get some feedback, and when you get some feedback, change and adjust the adoption plan, see how it goes. Those things are really, really, really standards when you talk about user adoption. So that's very common for basically every different department. But the IT is way faster to use the tools. The IT is, in some cases, way easier to get the tools involved in the daily business. So that's it from my side. I just skipped the live demos for Conditional Access and MFA because I thought maybe too much for this. Any questions from your side?
I think it was great. I don't think it was too much. And honestly, the slides are more informative than mine. So could I ask for the slide set?
Definitely.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm looking for those pictures you have used as well. I like that.
They're awesome. Harder to explain though. But I'll keep the notes in there. I don't have any questions, no.
Awesome.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. Great session. And as you said, if you have any questions regarding this session for Michael, just reach out to him on social media, right? All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. I don't think Chris has arrived yet. I think he's stuck in traffic or something. And as I said earlier, he got the slides. But I have some. Let's see here. You can see my slides, right?
Yes, we can see your prompt.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm just briefly going to talk about the next meeting. It's on Tuesday, February 18th, 3 GMT. It's the same time as today, also. And of course, I'll put this session on YouTube, on our YouTube channel as well. And of course, feel free to go in there because there's a lot of sessions in there. Also, I'm going to talk briefly about our Teams Fest. Please submit for Teams Fest before the end of January, January 31st. And I don't know, some of you might have
27th.
27th. Is it
27th?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Vesa. 27th. Submit before that. Some of you might have attended the Oktoberfest we had, and that was a great success. And I can promise you this will be bigger and better in all ways. So if you just want to speak, it doesn't matter if you're good or bad, just if you have a passion for something, you want to talk about it, please submit and do that before January 27th. All right. Thanks so much to our speakers today. And if you want to reach out to us, you have our Twitter and YouTube channel over there as well. And EuroTeamsUG@outlook.com if you want to have any questions or so. Just reach out to us. So with that, I thank you all for attending, and thanks to both of our speakers today. And hopefully I'll see you next month.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mike.